So, good morning, everyone. We are back with our Power Pack session today. We are running a series of panel discussions on women, on the future of women entrepreneurship. It's called Script for Her. So Script for Her started as a hackathon that we are undertaking along with Impact Hub Manila for providing tech solutions to rural women entrepreneurs. And as we looked at doing this, and we realized that one of the most important things is to begin the conversations around it and talk to various stakeholders. On the first day, we had various people from the CSR space coming and talking about what is their perception, how do they look at the future of women entrepreneurship in India. Yesterday, we were talking to thought leaders from the space of finance, as that's one of the very significant issues raised by women entrepreneurs across socioeconomic backgrounds. And today we are into the panel which is going to talk about tech for women entrepreneurs. And it's crucial because post the pandemic, we've actually realized the potential and not only the potential, but also the reach and benefit that can be taken across to women entrepreneurs across the board. And to take us through this session today would be Santosh Abraham. Santosh has been a dear friend, and he is the vice president at NASSCOM Foundation. Santosh brings in a lot of experience working with development sector organizations across the board, and he brings in a lot of thought also in the space of how technology can be utilized for the development processes across. So I welcome Santosh into the session. Over to you to moderate the session, today's session, Santosh.
Thank you, Anirban, and very good morning to all of you. So I'm very excited to be moderating this panel, and as indicated earlier, I'm on the minority side this time. There are very good panelists with me who have more understanding and have lived the topic and have lived experiences working on the topic. So just to give a brief background. So the foundation is the social arm of the IT BPM industry, and I think our work has always been in the confluence of where we can see tech and social impact coming together, either to by means of each other or by one or the other. So that has been the interest area for the organization per se. And one of the reasons why this is very apt is because if you look at the whole tech industry, the buzzword right now is Industry 4.0, and research says that the Industrial Revolution 1, 2, and 3 were bereft of too much of women contribution. While there have been some, there has not been too much of women contribution, is what they say. But Industry 4.0 is here. It's now. It's digital, and all the reason why one should be able to pick it up and seize the moment. So that is the basic understanding. Now, we also know that tech continues to change behaviors, habits, and also, create wealth. And that is the reason why we are here. And to understand if tech takes center stage of the next, growth process, we also know that, tech helps, entrepreneurs help with their strategies, pricing, presence online, meeting customers, getting feedback, and making process changes. Now, how does that turn into a reality for our women entrepreneurs? Do they have access to it, and do they use it? And I think that will be what the panel will bring out. we are also seeing, as an organization, we're seeing that the workforce participation for tech leaders and women especially is on the rise. And we also say that the direct outcome is that many tech leaders, women tech leaders, are moving out to entrepreneurship, and there is a direct impact of that happening. So, very excited to be here to see what the possibilities are for the whole industry to come together and either create solutions that will help women entrepreneurs, or women entrepreneurs themselves creating solutions that will help the space. So that's a bit of context setting that I wanted to give, but I think I have an amazing panel whom I would like to introduce right now. No particular order. I have Vinita More. Vinita is the founder of Lay Ada Wellness, and they have a product called FinProm that helps elders to manage their finances. And she's been a business administration expert and an aspiring marketer, and has more than 25 years of experience working in this tech and tech-led entrepreneurship. Welcome, Vinita. Next, we have Sunita. Sunita, is the co-founder of MeraBills, as another amazing phone-based solution for women entrepreneurs to help them with managing their customers, clients, feedback, expenses, and whatnot. So again, helping the back of beyond and women entrepreneurs. Smita needs no introduction. She's the co-founder and CEO of Rangde, and I think Rangde has been in the space of entrepreneurship, and I think their main USP is trying to bring in a lot of low-income investors so that they can also invest and see how the whole entrepreneurship space works, so that you're not only looking at high worth individuals to always invest, to see that sustainable side of this thing. And last but not the least, we have Nimisha. Nimisha is a journalist and entrepreneur, and she's been working in the space of gender and technology. And right now, she also founded a company, Linkitbluecollar, and again looking at developing skills and developing tech-based solutions that will help impact the social sector, especially young people and women. So, with this stellar panel, I would like now dive straight into the conversation areas that we would want. So, I think I'll start with Sunita. Sunita, you've been working on a phone-based app. And what we have seen is that though there is a huge tech revolution, rural areas still need, seems to be places that are hard to reach, and multiple challenges, either it's the ownership or accessibility or adoption. So, these are critical conversations. So in this whole thing, what has been your experience, and what do you think are critical features that one needs to have for this to move on?
Let me first say that we founded this team. We founded a company to start MeraBills, which is a simple phone app. And over the last 6 months, we have worked in a couple of rural areas. So I can use that experience to sort of answer your questions. I think what we have learned is that everything begins with understanding. So I think if you understand the benefits and the pitfalls, I think we always talk of benefits, but benefits and pitfalls of technology, then women will approach it with more confidence. And I think the pandemic has sort of accelerated that understanding in some sense. I think pandemic has created people who are not adopting technologies are sort of becoming have-nots because they're not able to reach their customers, they're not able to accept payments, and so on. So I think coupled with these scenarios and circumstances, and if we couple it with sort of a little bit support and training, and women are able to see the implications of technology. I think in terms of implications, is that how will it benefit them? Then all the hesitation goes. I think we have some women who have understood that implication, and then they come back to us and say, oh, your MeraBills is indispensable. I don't even know how we survived, because it's helping them keep track of their income, expense, get business insights, keep track of their orders that are coming in that they need to send in a timely manner, and everything that they struggled with. So I think women in general look for efficiency. So I think once they, the problem is if they don't try it for long enough and they get daunted by certain things, then they may not get to that critical point, over which if they get over that hump. And I think that's where, the responsibility lies on us, is to create technology which is simple enough, is not intimidating, and serves the purpose that they need. And I think once we are sort of understanding, what are the needs of different micro segments can have different requirements. So I think it's been a very interesting journey. We have had people who are, doing dairy work, keeping cows and keeping their expenses, and understanding what it means to, take care of cows or goats over a period of time and what that expense looks like. Because so far they've been in the dark. And then on the other hand, we have had tailors, people supplying food from home, and they suddenly have clarity. So technology has the power to bring that. I think the other thing that I would like to add is what we observed is that in the rural areas, there's this poor women entrepreneurs, and in general, poor families who are entrepreneurs deal with so much. I mean, they also have a frenetic financial activity. And I think technology like MeraBills, we want them to sort of, be able to plan their financial future and lift them out of that. But I think nothing's going to happen overnight. So I think it's going to happen in stages. So that criticality is making them understand, today they'll be borrowing, investing, saving in gold, dissolving something to meet some other need. And it's pretty frenetic if you observe what they do. So it's a challenge. Both, you said you had a panel on the financial, this thing, but I think something like technology to help them grow their business and stepwise along sort of create these financial products and help them bridge this gap so that, we can move from one stage to the other, from their, frenetic financial life where they try to get a loan, then, have trouble paying that, or sometimes they're saving, but they still take a loan. So there's all kinds of, frankly, we don't even know how they deal with it, right? So I think if we can understand their situation and their operating, their environment that they live in, then we can create technology that can, move them from one stage to the other. And that's what we at MeraBills are hoping we can do. So.
Great, Smita. I think definitely, it resonates well with our understanding that the technology has to be relevant and, also has to be keeping the end user in mind. So Nimisha, I'll come back to you with the same question. You've been working with young people and women and technology. And Nimisha, if you can let us know, what is your understanding of criticality in terms of, is it training, is it reinforcement, and building on from what Sunita said?
Lovely. Actually, it's such a brilliant question itself, and it's quite all amalgamating into understanding what do the rural folks actually want. So if we sit in our ivory towers and assume what they want, that itself is the precursor to go wrong. First, be in their shoes to even understand what do they really require, because their lifestyle is actually way better than most other urbanites. They are much more calmer, much more cooler about things. They're not really running after money. So do they really require technology to help them with what? So first, they understand the benefit, just exactly what Sunita said. First, let them understand that there's a benefit coming through technology with what they do. In fact, rural areas in India, according to Linkitbluecollar's survey, which was done during pandemic, we realized semi-rural areas, the areas which are at the border of urban and rural areas and actual rural areas, are actually very proactive into adjusting what they truly require to progress in life. You need to ask them how do they wish to progress in life instead of telling them this is how you will progress in life. In fact, any technology that is being used by the rural folk, according to me, is actually a very big winner in India. Because when Linkitbluecollar began to look at groups of young women who wanted to get a job and they knew that logistics and e-commerce is actually doing very well, They were or just got ready to get trained in electric vehicle skills. Now, how do they even how do they come to know that electric vehicles is a keyword in the urban sector now? But they did realize it. So their information is not backward. It is quite ahead. It's quite in sync with what the urban scenario is. Almost all of them, we realized, were using WhatsApp. Even if the bandwidth was low, they knew exactly the corner where they can go, help their sibling with studies during pandemic because the same smartphone got used. And they were all quite aware that this is where the bandwidth will be high, and they would access WhatsApp. When specific areas were intimated for their training sessions on ground, they all knew how to use Google Maps. All they did was make it regionally relevant, put it in the language they understand and speak. And they got the route much better than an urban lady would. This is a girl who's just 17 and 18 years old. She knew that if I have Google Maps on my phone, I could go into an area where the bandwidth is good. I can download it and then use it later for me to reach with the nearest bus. So if we had a training session which we would tell them, they would change 3-4 buses and reach the spot bang on time. Isn't technology supposed to get us where we intend to go? They were getting it all right. Common link being technology for the masses, we realize in the rural sector needs to be free, at least at this stage. If it is regionally relevant, and it will be understood very well. So regionally relevant technology for the masses, freely available, suitability, benefits, almost interrelated terms for the rural sector. Only if there is availability can there be adoption. For all this, understanding is the most important aspect, which in my language as a journalist would also be called awareness. If we bring awareness to them in regionally relevant terms, in the language they understand, according to me, technology will get adopted. Just make sure that it's free to get started with.
Sure. I think to the very important points where, we're talking about technology being very, very relevant and to the point and localized. I'd like to come to Vinita. Vinita, you've been, your product is looking at creating users in the segment that there have not been too much of users in the elderly segment. But there is also, coming back to the conversation at hand, there's a common perception that women are very slow to adopt a technology, probably, a decade old, but still in the local parlance. So what, according to you, is that conversation right? Or is it just something that is being tossed in the air saying, this is what is happening? So your thoughts on this, Vinita?
The conversation is absolutely right, Santosh. I'll just come to, I lost my uncle last year to COVID, and my aunt, she was totally overwhelmed with all her financial expenditure. So she did not, she was planning a trip to UK where her son stays, not knowing that her passport validity is just for 2 months. You need 6 months. So, and things like that. So we did a research, and in a cohort in even IIM Bangalore NSRCEL, I realized all the women who are entrepreneurs or are working women earning a lot of money have no idea about their own personal finances. And the lack of technology, they just have to put a Google reminder or use an Excel sheet. It's also a lack of incentive for some reason. So I developed this app basically for women that they just have to put in their data. They just, the least technology they have to use, just put in the data, that the date, and we will send them the reminder. That's it. Then the major things which has already been covered, like things like awareness and ask the women what they want. All this is fine. But what we really need to do is hand holding. This is very important, whether it's rural India or urban India. So in rural India, you hear of stories like a young girl, she wants to attend her classes. She builds a shed on a hillock and she goes there and studies because she does not have the internet in her village itself. So, and whereas we are using Alexa to switch on the light and switch off the light. So the huge divide is there. Yet in the cities where the technology is available, for so easily, women just don't want to use it. So you have to handhold them. I think handholding is the most important, because in rural areas, you even hear from villages, women are selling from remote villages via Amazon to to whole of India or to internationally also, the handmade bags, etc. But when you see in the urban area, the technology, I wish this infrastructure could somehow be put to the rural areas, because they are so remotely placed, or maybe because of the density of population, whatever the reason, they don't have the facility, but they have the will. And if we do the hand holding for them, this will be like a boon for them. And also, as we were discussing before the session, taking safety measures in keeping the safety measures in place, because they could be very vulnerable, as we have been victims of cyber attacks, cyber abuse also at times. So they will be very new to this technology, exposed to them. So if it is very safe and we handhold them, give them the infrastructure, I think the rural India, we see Afghanistan and Sudan, all this conflict area, how the women are telling about their stories, they're coming out of it. So why not India, just give them the facility, give them the infrastructure, handhold them. And I think we can, the rural India can create big wealth, huge wealth just by this.
Great, Vinita. So, Sunita, any thoughts on this? Of the slowness of adoption, or do you think that the trend is moving up and there is more women, using tech as of now?
No, we from our training sessions, it's been a good. I think the point about hand-holding is really important. The second thing is having the technology be accessible in their language in which they are comfortable is important. And I think then there is the sustained support. I mean, like I said, there is a critical point at which they are flying, So if you think like you can do a one-day session and that, it'll just happen. We have felt that maybe multiple training sessions at, with breaks in between and touch points with them are more beneficial. And definitely, I think once they have the motivation and they start understanding and they use it for like say a week or two, then there is a huge, incentive for them to continue. But if they just think of it as something that's being thrown on them or forced on them, then it's not going to be that successful. So I think the approach has to be, I think we have worked with trusted organizations, like Dhriti was one of them, Mangdeshi is one, and we are working with several other, GMR, Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, and a couple of multiple foundations. And the access that we have to the women through them, through the trusted partnerships, really helps. So I think that environment of comfort and support definitely helps. And then there is no stopping, I feel. And like I said, of course, the thing is that you should build technology in a way that's simple, which, where women can find what they need without having a clutter. So I think that's what, YouTube and WhatsApp have shown us the way, kind of saying that if women are finding how to do things on YouTube, cooking on YouTube, and they're like not doing just wasteful things, right? They're actually building skills, like how to learn crochet on YouTube. So I think there is willingness to adopt technology, and luckily I think the technology has become more accessible. From what I know, there's like 40% adoption among the rural masses, not just, I'm not talking women here, of smartphones or so I think that's like a huge number that, and we can, instead of just having TikTok and stuff, we can make technology which is functionally useful for them to grow their business, to, improve their livelihoods. And I think it's kind of proven, right, with all the multiple studies over time that, women can save money. It's much better for the family than men. So I think if they realize that technology can better that, there will certainly be no stopping.
Yeah, thank you, Sunita. I think both conversations are looking at how do you establish the what's in it for me really early on, so that we are able to move the conversation towards adoption and just not throw tech as a means to, or a lever, and just leave it at that. So that neatly brings me on to the next question. So Smita, you've been working with entrepreneurs for a long time now. Are there proven successful models that you've graduated out of Rangde, and they've been using tech as a main lever in increasing income or doing better business? So it'd be great to hear your experiences in that.
Sure, Santosh. Not too many success stories, I would say, because the kind of communities that we actually work with, I think it's going to take us a lot more time for us to even get some of the success stories, at least success the way, we, conventionally interpret and define. But then what in our experience has really worked is, using technology to create and restore agencies for the communities that we actually work with. Just to give you an example, a few years ago, we started, one of our flagship projects called Swabhiman, which was aimed at financial literacy and in some sense bridging this, digital divide, if I could call it that. And like many of the panelists said, it's just about how do you make this relevant? How do you make this accessible? And this experiment, in some sense, was our hole in the wall experiment, right? What we did was we set up a digital kiosk just next to the post office in a village where, there's a very high footfall. People visit the post office for, very regularly. And there's this kiosk. And this kiosk had a lot of financial literacy material that was loaded into it, right? It was all in their own language, very easy. People could just biometrically authenticate themselves and the kiosk gets started. They could choose everything. So this was our simple experiment. And we saw that, over a period of time, women were accessing this learning at different points in time. So what this resulted in, and in the same village, many people had actually tried financial literacy programs where there was a trainer and that program would happen at a particular time. Nobody really asked the women, are you even free at this time, right? I think it's about getting down to those basics and understanding, is this going to work or not? Initially, very few people, turned up at the kiosk at all because they were like, hey, what is this happening? Once we had the early adopters, we saw that, there was a beeline, there was a surge. And we also gamified this a bit, people could actually take a digital assessment and, and on this kiosk, their score would get printed in a small receipt sort of a thing. And they could actually see that, right? So just a simple thing like that. We saw, women, and it was just fantastic to see the kind of response we got. So imagine that too, the kind, and on this kiosk, people could also come and apply for a loan. So we tried to make this as accessible as possible. So there was no male trainer, somebody they had to go, interact with. So there was no dependency on any human being there, who could, and then bias would come in, okay, the timings won't work. None of that actually, was even, was at play in some sense. And we saw over a period of time how after this financial literacy programs, people started using their bank accounts, more regularly. We saw they were getting, their passbooks updated. And I remember when we started this program, we had visited the bank just to build partnerships with local agencies there. And a few months later, when we visited, the branch manager asked us, oh, you are the guys behind Swabhiman. Suddenly, there are women from this village coming and asking us to get our printer fixed because they can't get their passbooks updated, unless our printer is actually fixed. So you are the people. So for me, that was a great testimony of the fact that somebody is actually using, a service. So I think it's about empathy, it's about technology, it's about human-centered design. So much effort actually goes into building products for people like you and me, right? How much of user testing happens? How much of gamification happens? Are we doing the same for our rural communities to be able to access technology? I think that's the question, right? So we can't create poor solutions for poor people. If we actually do the same kind of, method and rigor that we use for, building some of the world's best products, I think adoption, relevance, all of that will actually follow suit. It's just about, how do we design these products? And that's what we've learned in our experience. And it's just been fantastic to see people actually use all of this.
Great. Smita, I think that actually brings a lot of validation to our own conversation that, technology is not going to leave you, right? Whatever you do, it is going to come behind you and, make sure that you learn it to use it. So Vinita, any thoughts on this, and saying how your experience over the last 25 years and how you've seen success models in tech, if there's something that you can share. You're on mute, Vinita.
So yeah, fantastic idea, Smita, about the kiosk. What Santosh, I have also realized is technology goes hand in hand with community building. If you first build a community and then introduce technology, like I see people who are not very tech savvy, especially women, they have WhatsApp groups if you're in a community, and they're buying and selling on the WhatsApp group. Small household items like sweaters, someone is knitting. So my aunt who's 80 years old, she keeps buying stuff from there. So community building is also very important. Also, technology is mostly now for free. And as we see, even what we are using, Facebook, everything, the earning is mainly by advertisement or things like that. So if we make whatever product we are making, if we make it accessible, which has already been covered, and free. So it cannot be free. Someone is ultimately paying for it. So how we have to find out a module where that it can sustain itself. That technology can sustain itself. People are finding it. So, or there are like how Clubhouse is there. They had someone who sponsored it. So somehow you make it, you either find a sponsor, you find advertisement, or like cred, where the credibility of the users is also already established. They already have a community where the credibility is established. Now what is happening on cred? Recently they have introduced that people are taking loans from each other, and that is how cred is earning money. So you have to find out, technology is fine, but when you're building a solution, it should be such that it can sustain itself, because nothing comes for free ultimately. That is my take on it. And I feel community building and hand-holding are the two main things after building that module.
Sure. Thank you, Vinita. I think valuable inputs there. So Nimisha, I'll come to you with one question, then I'll probably open it out. See, the whole question of the rural gender and the digital divide, how you are looking at it. I know that your organization Linkitbluecollar is working towards that. What is that trigger point that made you move in that direction, and how do you think we can bridge this whole gender, rural, and digital divide?
So thanks, Santosh. So, yet again, we're looking at an aspect which is so integral to our life. We are calling it a divide, but it's an aspect, it's a nuance which is already existing. Rural already existed. In fact, most of India is actually still in the rural sector. It's only fewer who's in the urban sector. Gender was always there, and digital has just come now. So we're calling it a divide, but it's a nuance which is being there in our life. Some part of it has been there earlier, and some has got added now. What I feel about the female part of it, or the women part of it, why this is even called a divide, is because till the time a woman is not self-efficient enough to earn, and earn well, every privilege that can be bought or that is sold and she can buy shall elude her to some extent. How many women in a rural sector do you find are working and getting paid for it? If you find them in a farm, it will be their husband's farm. If you find them in a farm doing some spade work, she will be paid much lesser than the male counterpart over there. And all the money that she would earn, she will go and buy some food for her family. Tell me how many women are actually saving it to go and get the latest iPhone which just got launched. Leave about an iPhone. Tell me how many women are actually saving up to buy a new first-hand smartphone, despite knowing very well that this can actually help her ease her life. So in the rural sector, technology will only come to her because she considers it a privilege, and a product which can enable that technology for her to access it is also a privilege. But does she earn enough to even buy it? Can she buy it? Can they own one smartphone instead of waiting for one to be passed on to them as a second hand or get gifted to them? Technology to me is an enabler. It doesn't need to be expensive. It can be free. If it is understood, it can be accessible. And if it is accessible, it will get adopted soon enough. Women believe in keeping their homes and communities intact and close-knit. If they find technology easing that part, they will take to it. If they find there's going to be a divide in their close-knit community and family, giving them some kind of a scenario which they are not akin to liking it, they will not adopt to it fast enough. Any technology that can aid in spreading some cheer collectively, you will find women will take to it and adapt to it faster. Hopefully, tech that brings us closer actually also bonds us and does not create a void. Ask an urbanite and he'll tell you how technology is not really bringing them closer anymore. It is trying to, but there is a void which is created. Perhaps a rural person who we feel is backward is already aware of that. Technology can be efficient. It needs to ensure happiness in the end. And if we embrace it, it needs to ease our life. Maybe a rural person knows about it much more than us, because happiness by itself is already free, isn't it? So do you need another free access technology to bring you the same thing that they already are experiencing? Perhaps rural women know this much more than us, much better than the urbanites. Tell me to the extent that you agree, Santosh. Do we need to give them technology to bring them the same happiness that they already have? And if we can convince them that it can declutter their life, can bring in ease for their children, can ensure food on a daily basis on their plate, which is nutritious enough, but does not make them lethargic to go and grow their own food, a rural woman will take to it. This is a question urbanite need to find. Is a rural woman really a target because she's already happy?
Great. So, Nimisha, very, very thought-provoking questions there. Smita, I'd like to briefly come to you and then, ponder back on the question. So, Smita, what has been your understanding of this whole, idea of divide and, and as Nimisha said, it has existed. And is it becoming wider now that some people have access to it, some people don't have access to it, some people have knowledge to access it, some people don't have the knowledge to access it. So, what has been your experience?
Nimisha said it beautifully, I think. And I think if we look at technology as being an enabler and the role of civil society organizations in helping people understand this, right? So I can't emphasize more on that. So if that gap that currently exists in understanding the convenience and the enablement role that technology can actually play, if somebody can bridge that knowledge gap, I think that's all is needed, and adoption will actually happen. And I think I can't emphasize more on the role that organizations like ours can actually play in making this happen. And we don't need to do anything once people discover the power of technology. And I do think that digital to a large extent can bridge some of these divides that have existed, right? Especially the rural connect, where we have probably had a lot of people migrating to urban areas from rural areas, and where they belong is in their rural homes. So can actually technology be used to create employment, to create entrepreneurship opportunities for people where they are? I think that's a question that we need to ask for ourselves, right? So taking technology to the doorstep to avoid and address some of the other large scale challenges that we are facing, I think that's something we all need to ponder about.
Great, Smita. So before I carry on, there are some questions from the audience that, if anybody of you can pick it up. So the first question is, what are some initiatives taken by the government to make technology accessible to women entrepreneurs? So does anybody want to pick up this question?
So I'll go for it. In fact, Linkitbluecollar is already working on it. So what's happened is that even during lockdown, the Karnataka government was very keen that electric vehicles should be pushed onto the roads so that it brings down pollution levels firstly, but it also brings in a certain last mile connectivity, because buses and private transports do not need to ferry just one person from one point to the other. You could do it with an electric vehicle and you could do it with a two-wheeler. So that was a message that the government wanted to convey at that time, and they came up with the EV policy, electric vehicle policy in Karnataka, which actually gave Linkitbluecollar a fantastic push, because we were already working on a program like that. So as we speak right now, Santosh, I'm actually quite glad to say that right now in Karnataka, if you are in Bangalore and you understand the roads of Bangalore, in Banashankari, there's an ongoing program where we are chosen girls from an NGO who have come from rural sector of Karnataka, who have come to Bangalore for jobs during lockdown because in the rural sector, they did not find enough employment and they were already educated enough. The state government had got them educated. So they came here, they found out there is jobs in e-commerce and logistics, but we do not have the skills to kind of get that job. So we analyzed that, worked backwards, found a training partner with Bounce, and finally a program was made, and right now Bounce is training them free of cost to give them electric vehicle riding skills. With that comes a driving license, and then we give them a guaranteed job in the e-commerce sector, because a person who can drive or ride a scooter very well, understands the road rules very well, will be a preferred person by a Swiggy or Zomato or Dunzo and likewise. So technology to that extent, because the government pushed the EV policy, a program like this through Linkitbluecollar actually got formulated much faster despite the pandemic lockdown and the lockdown rules which existed sporadically during weekends or on weekdays. So it definitely has helped. In fact, more and more if the government is moving towards sustainable development goals, which eventually will lead to women empowerment, which will lead to alleviation of poverty, and which will also use a lot of clean energy alternatives, we do find that technology will be able to use programs which can be tailor-made for a person who is probably coming from the rural sector to the urban sector in search of jobs. And Linkitbluecollar is being able to do that with the Bounce as the training partner right now.
Great, great. Anybody else wants to respond? I have a couple of thoughts on this. Right. So I think one of the things that we are also seeing as a government is the BharatNet that has been envisaged to reach communities. So I think that if it happens, and it's claimed to be touching 2.5 lakh villages across the country, that would bring accessibility to internet and other technology to the community. So I think that is a solid step the government is taking. And I think there are a couple of other things that they are planning with the Niti Aayog. So I think definitely there are schemes that the government is bringing onto the table to ensure that we have, we are able to support women entrepreneurs. So I think that's the step in the right direction. So the next question that we have is probably, Smita, I think probably directed to you. It says that women entrepreneurs have traditionally worked, in networks, and working in network becomes their strength. And how do you build tech-enabled multiple networks in rural community for the rural communities of India? So how do you bring them all together, because they have their own traditional networks? Then there is a larger network they can come to. How does that convergence happen?
So when we design anything, we look at existing offline networks that are already there and how technology can just aid that existing network, because something technology can't replace is the existing networks that are already there, right? So for example, communities that we work in Maharashtra, there's a fantastic network of women who work together and support each other. They're like a mini tie in some sense, right? So all they needed was access, better use of WhatsApp, better use of basic technology in order to communicate, right? In order for them to aggregate aggregate everything that they produce. So we just devise and design solutions to help them aid what is already there. So that's just been the way we have been working, be it the peer-to-peer lending platform or the kiosk that is there. It's all based on what is already existing there and how technology can only amplify and further what communities already are doing. So that's been our approach.
Great. So I think the next question that we have is probably over to say Sunita. Sunita, when we speak about technology, mindset issues that restrict women from leveraging technology, the question is, how do we address them? While most of us have answered that, so probably if you can take a jab at doing it again.
Yeah. I think Nimisha answered that very well, in the sense women are looking at like the holistic impact of technology, and I think it's important for us to sort of introduce technology in a way that's helping them and not destroying what they have, right? I think whether it's So that's why I've been in technology 30 years myself. So I have a very acute sense of, I'm happy to have it in a reservation system. I'm happy to, book my airline tickets. Am I happy to invade and sort of, disrupt things that are already good? That's $1 million question that I face every day. So I think, I think that there is a space and need for technology. It has to be done responsibly. And I think especially when we take it to the rural areas, it has to be done with sensitivity. So I think I'm pretty acutely aware of, how can we sort of build technology that is overall and holistically useful, right? I think it helps them simplify their lives, like it has helped many of us in the urban areas. It has simplified so many things that we had to run to pay electricity bills, this, that, I think that when technology comes to that aid, it is wonderful. So I think we have found at MeraBills that, when we think of like the situation, the fact that they are mostly offline, how do we build it in a way that they can continue to leverage it and they're not left out in that divide? Then those are all the design questions that we sort of evaluate. And, if we want to gamify, what do we gamify? What do we do it for? Is it truly useful, or are we doing it for ourselves? Like, I think if it's a matter of, self-pride or building this notion that I have crossed this level, as Smita said, that's a good thing. But I think we have to be very careful about transcending certain limits at points. So that's my view on how to introduce technology in a way, and I feel that if you do it that way, it'll have maybe it'll take longer to adopt, but maybe it'll be the more successful approach.
So Nimisha, I see you beaming. Anything to add?
True. So Sunita's so bang on this, right? She's been in the field for so long, and she's actually seen the transition of technology being adopted and also liked. So she would know very well that if you do not like something, women are the first to reject it. And women are also first to reject something which is not conducive for their family or a community at large. So only if you start to use technology in balance, ease their life, but let it not be a clutter making or void creating agent, then we will be successful. And model in India is definitely going to be different from what is there internationally. So if we just bring something from global scenario and it's been fantastically successful, and try and implement it here, because there's fantastic funds coming our way to absolutely integrate it and get it going, the success may be short-lived.
Yes.
What we can do is we can tailor make it according to what we know about it, and then we function with it for longer lasting success. So technology for the long term is going to be tailor-made in India. And I think the giants need to understand that.
Absolutely. I think, what better way to communicate them to NASSCOMs? Great. I think the point that we've been driving home since morning is that technology there exists. Technology can be a leverage. Technology can be an enabler, but technology needs to be relevant. Technology needs to be friendly. Technology needs to be accessible, and if possible, free. If possible, because there are restrictions to that. But so Vinita, one last question before I throw it open to comments, is that most of the time when we speak about technology, it's always the software, and sometimes we get missed out on the hardware piece of it as well. So how do we break that cycle and say that when we talk about IT, we both use hardware and software as learning, so that people are more clued in.
Santosh, this is a very relevant question. So I'm still software friendly, but I'm hardware challenged. So anyone can sell me anything which is much superior to what my requirement is, and that goes for every single person. So I feel that again, education And the first question is, what do you want? Even in like the fin prompt which we have launched, I've learned that hand holding is important and what women want. So the thing is, like, one woman comes up with, you have not included, we have about 59 categories where they can fill in the maturity and renewal dates, but she comes up with, you have not given annual maintenance. I said, why do you want an annual maintenance? Because they're bombarding you with, the payment every year. So she said, no, they do not ask me when the service is due. They do not give me a reminder. They won't give me a reminder only when the money is due. So I want to know when my service is due. So best is to ask people or women what do they want, and that is where the hardware thing also comes, basically, that what do you want, and then build around it. An IBM or an Apple never comes. Apple, obviously, it's very women friendly because of its look, and I know my daughter has all the Apple products, but it's just because of the looks and the fancy this thing. But what women want, so the technology, hardware, people have to go out in the field, ask what do you want, build according to you. When they're selling, the marketing people also have to ask what do you want, and not oversell, which they always are doing to all of us all the time. So I think that is the most crucial point. Yes, there is a big gap between software and hardware. I do admit, Santosh, you have asked this, and it's with all of us, and hardware people have to take note of.
Yeah, that was from Sherry New Socia. I think it's not my question, so I need to acknowledge that. So I think I think we are coming closer to the finish here. So there are two questions that I would want two of you to respond to. The first one is that question which asks that when technology is designed for women, are there a lot of women on the table designing that? And if that is not the case, how do we increase that participation?
Correct.
Yeah, please go ahead, Vinita.
Yeah, so 50% of women takes girl students take science, and 40% take engineering. But when it comes to working or building, most of them vanish. I think because there is a big lack of role models, number one. Number two, there is some kind of fear. So there are very intelligent girls who are getting into these streams. But like what you're saying, when the technology is being built, I have been asking all my daughter's friends and other women that how many of you are in coding? They are making big money in finance and HR, etc. You hardly find any girls or women in coding. So you're right that when it comes to technology building for women or software for women, how many women are involved? Very, very few. That is my take. I don't know, while after studying technology, where do they vanish? I have no idea.
Anybody else?
Santosh, I'm going to dispel this myth. I do not believe that only women can design technology for women. I believe that there is a certain set of skills, and I think Smita hit the nail on one of them, was empathy. And there is, I remember when I did some of my first UX work, and my manager gave me this book, which talked about how the, signage on train stations is designed, where, male, female, everybody is able to get around, right? And how like signage in, if you're traveling in a park or a tourist area, how that's, and there is training for it. I think UX is not just simply slapping on a few buttons. I think there is a thought process which goes all the way to the behavior. And I think that thought process, if that's ignored by a woman, you will get equally crappy software or experience. So I fundamentally think that it's the training and the emphasis that you give on the design that will lead to products which are usable both by women or men. So I don't like to sort of say, oh, all technology for women should be designed. I think where we have to address this thing is, can we improve the education in our, streams? And women will naturally sort of gravitate towards them because they do care about, like, Vinita said, like, women like aesthetics and, simplicity and functionality of use and flows. They have a better sense of it. So I think, but still has to be taught. I mean, I fear that our computer science education may actually wipe that off. So I hope that we sort of preserve that innate sense and nurture it and bring it into our design. And you have to be very acutely, consciously aware of the fact that you're designing for simplicity. So.
Absolutely. I think, Sunita, I couldn't agree more with where I can draw a parallel is the sector, this disability sector, where one has been, for over years talking about universal design and seeing that if that is something that could be created, which could mean access for everyone, and if there is a little bit of carefulness, then it is made perfect for everyone. So I think completely agree on the idea that one needs to follow some design principle, at least the universal ones, so that there is no people left behind and they can use the technology. So last two responses I think I'll cover to Smita and Nimisha, and the question was that if we were to build a technology-enabled infrastructure for rural women entrepreneurs, what could be the vision? What would it lead to?
If we had to tailor-make technology for women in the rural sector, ideally, because it is a scenario which an urban person will only assume and not know fully, it is very imperative and very important that at the crux of decision making, a person who will be affected by it in the rural sector is also in the decision making stage. Every feature which is designed should ideally be first flagged off by them, that this is what we require, this is how we intend to use it, and this is the extent to which we intend to use it. So if you have decision makers where a person who we are trying to help is also already a part of it, you will find the technology enablement will be much greater. We will also be able to percolate much faster in the community we're trying to reach. So if it is women in the rural sector, it needs to be a phone which they can carry along with them. Let's say we'll come to a hardware here. It needs to be something that they can carry along with them while they're holding their children, while they're cooking, while they're in the farm, and perhaps also while they're wearing a sari. If it is in Maharashtra, she's wearing a nawari. If she's going towards Bangalore, she's again wearing something similar to a nawari. So is there a phone which she can carry? Can the phone come with a hook? Can the phone come with a cord? Can the phone come with a torch? Can the phone come with a button which has a tracking, which also sends out a signal that she is in distress? Ask any woman across the world, urban, rural, semi-urban, semi-rural, safety will be a #1 concern. If you can tackle that, if you can get her to feel safe, you will find every other aspect of our life is getting adapted to much faster. The ease can only come when the person is feeling safe. Can our hardware, can our software, can our technology address that? Our financial inclusion is one of the most important aspects, but the biggest aspect that this world needs to address is safety for women. We really actually do not require men to always safeguard us. We require technology also to enable that part. Can our hardware, can our software enable that part? And I'm sure it can be done.
Sure. Thanks, Nimisha. Smita, any inputs?
I think a network like this definitely needs to be co-created with, various stakeholders. I think, it can't be done in isolation and without really, like Sunita said, without taking into account people who we are designing this for, be it a network or be it whatever we actually need. And let's not forget, some of the largest networks were actually, very organically created without any technology. Think of Amul, right? The largest network of dairy farmers. Did they have any technology when they started? No. So any technology that is used to create this sort of a network needs to be built on some fundamental principles of community building, things that have already been there and co-created with all the stakeholders involved. Those would be my 2 cents.
Great. I think that's about time we have. And I think just to wrap this whole conversation up, I think, one of the things that we started off with is seeing how technology will work and technology can support women entrepreneurs. And that the world has gone to a place where there is a low-code, no-code kind of a scenario where one is able to develop their technology by themselves. So I think what we have learned is that, one is that we need to create a nurturing environment with empathy that will help the entrepreneurs involved understand the what's in it for me using technology, and ensure that we are using that as a place where we introduce technology. And I think all of us working together, I think we will definitely be in such a situation. So, and a wonderful shout out of thanks to every one of you for having this enriching conversation with us. I enjoyed hearing from you, and I thank the audience for the questions and their listening. So thank you so much again, and back to you, Anirban.
Thank you, Santosh. What an amazing panel. I mean, this can be converted into a textbook on how to design for women. It's so profound, and we have been talking about this at various forums, but this is what we need. The kind of insights that have come in, and that has to be communicated, and that's what we'll be trying to do, to communicate this to all the considered stakeholders, because designing for women, and the conversations went in a lot of spaces, but that's so important. By women and for women, both are the conversations, but I really like the perspective that Sunita also put in today, and it brings the debate to that context, and I really loved it. I would actually turn to the young people across the board who are looking at developing designs for women. Listen to this conversation, and there's a lot that there's to bring into the processes that there is a set of young minds who are already working in the hackathon that we are, the Script for Her hackathon, which is currently running. So this is a good session for them to also understand it. I would like to thank each one of you panelists here to bring in your thoughts, your experience in such a beautiful and articulate way here. Thank you, Vinita ji. It was a pleasure hearing you, and the personal touch that you've always given to it. Thank you so much. Sunita, amazing. I am so influenced by the discussions that you've put in. I personally need to talk to you a lot to understand a lot of other things that you were talking of. I would really look forward to that.
Love that, Anirban.
Smita, हम बात तो कर ही रहे हैं, but these are the perspectives a lot of time our conversations don't have, and I believe there's so much of knowledge that we have intrinsically, and if we just share with each other, basically share with me, I would be able to also understand it with more. So thank you so much, Smita, for being here and sharing your views. Nimisha, maza aa gaya. I think the way and the passion in which you put in your points and put in your thoughts, it was fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the panel. And Santosh, awesome as always. Thank you for moderating the session and taking the session to build it into such a robust conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anirban. Thank you for the opportunity.
And for all the attendees, thank you for being here. And we'll be having another session tomorrow, bringing in another set of stakeholders, which is incubators and how they are thinking about designing or looking at the future of women entrepreneurship. So we are talking of women-centric incubation and how it needs to be done. What are the aspects that needs to be kept in mind when you're doing women-centric incubation tomorrow at 11 a.m. And we would be looking forward to all of you joining. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you.